Hello, and welcome to this short Yin-Style hip opening practice. For our practice today, you don't necessarily need to have props, but I would recommend having at least one blanket. You might even want two. Again, that's not mandatory though. If you don't have access to anything like that at the moment, you can do without. Let's start on our backs. So just take a moment here. Take your feet a little wider than your hips. Let your knees knock together. And just place your right hand over your belly button and take your left hand over your chest. You're welcome to close your eyes. And we'll begin our practice with 3 slow, deep breaths in and out through your nose. And with your hands on your abdomen and chest here, I want you to see if you can feel the movement of your breath in your torso. And especially if you maybe feel a little more movement in your left hand than the right, can you balance it out or even emphasize breathing down into your belly? And blinking your eyes open. Widen your knees, heel toe your feet in so your thigh bones are parallel. And then without touching it, hug your right knee to your chest. Feel free to just rest your arms down by your sides and circle your right ankle a couple times each way. And then again, without touching it, you might widen your left knee to the side to make a little space. Make a big circle with your right knee and try to move from your right hip. See if you can do that keeping both sitting bones on the ground, go in both directions. And switch. Place your right foot down, lift your left knee to your chest, circle your ankle a couple times each way. And then again, maybe move your right leg out of the way a little bit, but keep your sitting bones on the ground and make a big circle in each direction, moving from your left hip. And bring your left foot to the mat. This time, lift your right foot up, and without touching it, see if you can hook your right ankle over your left thigh in a figure 4. Flex your foot and try to line this up so the sole of your right foot is flush with the outseam of your left thigh. Now take your arms out into either a T with your palms up, or you can make a soft kind of goalpost shape with your arms. And then keep everything else the same, but from your waist down, tip everything to the left. So your outer left thigh and ankle and the sole of your right foot will come to the floor. Now, if that's not quite happening, if you're kind of getting stuck before getting to the ground, this is where one of your blankets may be really useful, maybe even both. Feel free to use the blankets to bring the floor up a little bit higher so you can really rest your leg and foot on something. Now, even though for most of us this probably won't happen, imagine you could sink your right glutes and the right side of your lower back to the floor as you keep your right knee facing skywards. Notice if there's any tension creeping in, especially into parts of your body that really don't need to be tense, like maybe it's the jaw or the brow. Sometimes it's even the neck or the skin around the eyes. Sometimes just by noticing those tense areas, you can start to breathe into them and release some of that habitual patterned tightness. Take a big breath in. And with your exhale, lightly engage your abdominal wall to help lift your legs back to center. And you've got a couple of options here. You could keep your left foot on the ground, right foot flexed, and just kind of work that external rotation at the right hip, work the knee away from your face. Otherwise, you might lift your left leg up and maybe interlace your hands around the back of your left thigh. Now, if it's okay with your knees, you can also grab the front of your shin. But again, that can be a little bit tough on the knees, so Choose wisely. Keep your right foot flexed. And even especially if you are holding the thigh, one thing you might try here is really pushing your left thigh bone firmly into your hands. And especially if you find that in this pose your lower back is pretty rounded, that action of pushing the thigh bone into the hands is a great way to very often give your lower back its natural curve back, right? So you might even feel a little lift of your lower back away from the floor. And when we're stretching out our hips, one of the body's most sort of immediate escape valves to get out of the stretch is to flex the spine, especially when we're stretching here, the outer hips. So see if you can really feel your natural lumbar curve. And then you may notice you actually get a deeper hip stretch when you pay attention to your spinal alignment. Now let your left leg go, unhook your right ankle, and either straighten your legs into Shavasana or maybe straighten your legs up towards the ceiling. Just give your knees a little break from all that flexion. Let's do the other side. Place your feet down onto the floor. Lift your left knee into your chest. Flex your foot and hook your ankle over your thigh in a 4. Maybe without your hands, but if needed, use your hands. Now reach your arms out into either a T or like a soft goalpost shape and tip everything from your waist down to the right, maybe landing on the floor, maybe landing on 1 or 2 blankets. Feel your shoulder blades sinking heavily down into the floor. Feel your chest broad. Feel your lower back spacious and broad. Feel as though you could sink your left glutes and the left side of your lower back all the way down to the floor. What's that like? Just a couple more breaths here. Notice what shifts as you remain still here. Take a steady breath in. Exhale, lift your legs back to center. Feel free to keep your right foot on the floor and work the knee away from your face. Or you might decide to try lifting your right leg up and interlacing your hands around either your hamstrings or around the front of your shin. Feel your left leg reaching, especially the left knee, moving away from your chest, even as you pull the right thigh closer. And I do recommend this if you're holding on to the right thigh, or if you aren't, maybe do so, give it a try. Especially if you do feel some rounding happening in the lower back, try pushing your right thigh bone really firmly into your hands and just kind of check in with what that does. Often what you may find is it kind of helps you reach the tailbone to the floor so that you just feel a little bit more of your natural lumbar curve. And again, you might even feel a deeper hip release as you find that. And take a breath in. And with your exhale, let your leg go. Unhook your ankle and roll to your side. Come into the fetal position for a breath. Really use your top hand to come all the way up to your seat. Now we are going to finish our practice with a hold in pigeon pose. And so this is where you may want your blanket or blankets again. If you have a way you'd prefer to get into this, like maybe from a down dog, that's totally fine. Otherwise, you'll join me. We're going to bring the right shin forwards first. And you're going to take your left leg back and make sure you're on the left kneecap and your leg is straight back from the hip. Now, it's pretty rare for most bodies, you're going to want some propping underneath your right hip. There may be a few of you out there that don't need this, but again, that's pretty unusual. So I want you to go ahead and take either a blanket or maybe two blankets. You could even grab something bigger like a cushion or a bolster, and you're going to place that underneath your outer right hip. Now, you want to make sure that you are propped up enough that you don't feel like you're kind of tilting too much to one side, right? So for a lot of us, that's going to mean quite a lot of height under the right hip. And again, since we are also going to hold this for about 90 seconds or 2 minutes, you'll definitely want to make sure you're feeling really level in the back of your pelvis. If you find that your ankle sickles a lot in this pose, bends to the side, you might do this whole thing with your left toes curled. Now, if you have a spare blanket, sometimes it's nice to have a little kind of resting pad in front of your shin. Start to come down onto your elbows, and maybe you have them on the ground. Maybe you put them on your blanket. Maybe you use the blanket as a little pillow. And once you get here, really try to drop in. See if you can sink into sensation without chasing it, without clinging to it, or without avoiding it. What I think is kind of so interesting about this pose, it's a very polarizing one, right? Like some people really love Pigeon and they like groan happily when I teach it in public classes. I'd say there are probably just as many people who do not love this pose, especially when it's offered as a break. And so, especially if you're in that sort of latter category of maybe this isn't your favorite shape, maybe it's a little intense or uncomfortable, can you use this as an opportunity to learn about how you react to something uncomfortable? Because it really is so often the case that our yoga practice is really just a microcosm of how we are off the mat. And so the way we address challenges and discomfort in a yoga pose is often a really direct mirror of how we do the same thing when we're challenged or made uncomfortable by something in our everyday lives. Slowly begin to lift your head up. Pick your elbows up, walk your hands in. You're welcome to come back through a down dog if that's how you came in. Otherwise, you're going to join me and come onto hands and knees. And you're just going to stretch your right leg straight back behind you. Curl the toes under, shift forwards and back a couple of times. Good. And then we'll switch sides. So start to bring your left shin forwards. And again, you could come in through a down dog. You could come in through a pigeon pose. Up to you. Or pardon me, through tabletop. Now take your left shin forwards. And the more parallel your shin is to the front of your mat, the more intense this pose is. So if it feels like too much, bring your heel a bit closer to the front of your right hip. Again, feel free to place any padding that's appropriate beneath your left outer hip. And now that you kind of know we're going to hold it for about 2 minutes, maybe err on the side of caution, right? And go a little bit higher with your padding. When you're ready, start to lift your chest and then fold down over your shin. And maybe using your second blanket as a little forehead resting pad. Sometimes that can feel kind of nice. And feel yourself fully present for everything you're feeling in this pose. And even taking that a step further. Can you feel everything, right? Can you slip into this place of observing and feeling without judging, without labeling it as a good or a bad feeling? Can it just be what you're feeling? Yoga, there's this word, vairagya, for non-attachment. And what's so interesting about that word is that it has two root words, vairag and ragya. And one means no color, vairagya, vairag, and the other means color, no color and color. So the idea of non-attachment is no color and color at the same time. And so if you think about it like if you were a pane of glass and you were transparent, no color, you take on the color of whatever is around you without holding on to it. And this is the essence of vairagya, of non-attachment, of letting go. In yoga, the idea is that you find true freedom when there is this deep place inside you that cannot be disturbed. You can take on the colors of whatever is around you and blend in without holding on to it or allowing it to change you, without letting the outside world come inside and disturb your inner world. And that's really the essence of vairagya. Start to lift your head up and come up onto your hands. You can come out the same way you did last time. You can come through a three-legged down dog if you'd like. You could join me and come into tabletop. If you're with me in tabletop, stretch your left leg back, curl the toes under, and just kind of shift forwards and back a couple of times. And bring your knee down. Sit over to one side. Find a seat. And join your palms together at the center of your chest. And thank you so much for joining me for this short, hip-opening Yin-Style practice. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Namaste.